Before I begin, do you want to start with this first?
Oh, I'm running out of battery.
Before I begin, I just want to give the little caveat that this PowerPoint can be adapted to however you're presenting it to your students. This has a lot of information in it. Well, not a lot of information per se, but you can take some stuff out if you don't have time to do the activities, or if you don't have internet access to do the quiz. You can take some of these slides out to customize it to what you need. You want to give us the whole way.
Hey, and time management's really important. I'm a big believer in managing your time well. Can really help you in a lot of different ways. because I'm so busy and I'm really terrible these days at managing my time. But for these students that we're working with, I mean, they've got extracurricular activities, they may have jobs, they're dealing with brothers and sisters at home they have to take care of because their moms are not doing it. So discussing time management with them, I think, could be really beneficial in helping them academically and later on. So I think this is a real important intervention. I just wanted to plug that in there.
Can I say something? On the newswire, there is a time management workshop in the Poultry Science Building on Wednesday, if anyone wants to go. What? I think it's at 2, not really sure, but it's on the newswire. Wednesday?
Yeah, and those are put on, I think it's put on by Human Resources. Oh, no.
I thought it said the Employee Assistance Program.
Well, yeah, that's part of HR. So they do workshops like that for U of A employees, and you guys are GAs, so those are, some of them are a price, but like this one I think is free of charge. So anytime you guys see that, let's go.
We can lunch and brainstorm, and then we can go do time management.
Oh, yeah, so we'd like to add there's no SpongeBob clips in this
Dang
presentation.
it.
Oh, bummer.
We can watch it if
Okay.
you really want to.
I really want to. Which one?
Well, at least talk about it.
Wait,
Okay,
do you
no,
have
we'll
the
get through it.
inappropriate one?
We'll get through it and then we'll watch it. Okay.
We'll just not
Turn the.
Can I shut this?
Yes. Well, yeah, Dr. Kishner, we should come back in.
Okay. So who has a lot of stuff to do? All the time. Yeah, me too. Do you always get it done? Yeah? No? Yeah. Well, do you want to know some ways that you can get it done?
Yes.
Or get a lot of what you need to get done? Okay, cool. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about time management. Has anybody ever heard that term before, time management? Does anybody know what that means? So just breaking it down, managing your time, right? Being able to prioritize stuff, being able to put it in a way that makes sense. That way you can get the important stuff done first and then move on to the want-to kind of stuff, right? Okay. You'll never find time for anything. If you want time, you're going to have to make it. What does that mean to you guys? What do you think that means?
Prioritize.
Prioritize? Yeah.
There's only so many minutes and hours in the day.
Yeah.
It's not, you can't ever get more time. You just have to.
And a lot of that time that you're talking about, you have to sleep, you have to go to school, you got to do homework, right? So there's stuff that you have to do during the day. So then that only leaves you.
I don't have enough time.
I mean, those are very trivial things.
Yeah. So what are you doing with your time? And this activity is more of to use on an individual basis, or if you had access to a computer lab, you could do it with multiple students at once. So whenever you get here, go to this time management quiz, and you can go through. And so, do you estimate how many hours in a week you need to study? They can choose yes or no. So once they get through this, it'll give them a total. It'll be like a 1 through 10, and it'll say if you're low, then you need to look at some ways to increase your time management skills. Okay, if you're high, then they're pretty good. So that's a resource for you guys if you have access to do something like that. Okay. So what are some things that you guys do right now to get stuff done?
Make to-do lists.
You do make to-do lists. Okay, good. That's awesome. That's a great way to get stuff done. Anybody else?
I want to add to that, something that I kind of do with the to-do list is do it the night before. That's kind of a goals for the
Man,
next day.
Jason, that is a great way to do it. So,
I'm feeling more at risk every minute of this day.
Literally, and then this was yesterday's, and if I don't get stuff done, then I just.
It just goes on to the next day, yeah, exactly.
what about you, Tanya?
I just do stuff as it comes to me, like,
Yeah.
can't do
I
that.
don't, we don't really plan for it, you just kind of, as it pops up, you just do it, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
If you remember to do it.
What about you, Whitney?
I just write it on my hand. My mom just started all over my arms.
You know, my dad used to get mad at me for the exact same thing, but Sometimes it helps. Sometimes you gotta do that. That's true, that's a good point.
Sometimes
Okay.
I use a lot of post-it notes, like,
Yeah.
I have post-it notes all over my desk.
Do they ever fall off and you lose stuff?
Yeah, and then it's like, oh my gosh, it really takes like so much to do.
Right, okay, so to-do list, you guys mentioned that. Jason had a great point with being able to do that the night before. That way you can look at your next day and figure out what all you need to do, what's gonna be important for you to do, right? Can I get to my rest of
Sometimes I ignore you because of that.
Depending on what it is. Homework probably needs to be pretty high on the to-do list, right? So you need to make a list of things that you need to do, and then look at that list and be able to say, okay, am I gonna get like Jason, are you gonna be able to get everything done tomorrow, or is it gonna take a couple of days? Is it gonna take a week? Are you gonna have to spread it out? So let's say you had a big project coming up, right? And in your English class, you had to write a huge packet of papers. You wouldn't want to start with the night before, right? You would want to spread that out over at least a week so that you would have time to think about it and be able to have time to get stuff done, right? And so like Jason said, you want to adjust this plan every single day. So like Kylie was saying, if you don't get it done that day, it moves on to the next day, right? Has anybody ever tried that? Besides Kylie and Jason? Yeah?
I make a week to-do list and a day-to-day to-do list.
I do
So,
too.
and then the week
That's
to-do list
great.
has to go,
Wow.
yeah.
So
And sometimes I'll put Friday, it has to be done by Friday, it has to be done by Tuesday.
right. And that's a great way to put the deadlines,
really
because
is.
that goes back to our SMART goals, being able to set those goals in order to get them done in a timely manner, right?
I give myself arbitrary deadlines to keep myself from working the night before on an assignment.
Yeah.
So I'll make myself have a rough draft due before I need it.
That's really, really great. And that ties right into what we're gonna talk about next, prioritizing. So how do we get this stuff done? There's want-tos and there's have-tos, okay? So what would be an example of a have-to? School, work, homework, right?
Bills, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, anybody else?
Eat, sleep.
My job.
It's not such a do, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, it's
I need
not?
my coffee, that's a have-to. I
Yeah.
have to have at least 15 minutes to drink my
Going
coffee.
to my job.
Yep, your job, that's pretty high on the have-to list. You don't wanna get fired if you don't show up, right? What would be an example of a want-to?
I wanna go to the movies.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I wanna watch Breaking Bad.
yeah.
I was just
Me too.
I wanna prepare, a meal for the next 2 days or whatever, like prepping meals. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm sounding really anal.
Who here is in a club or plays a sport? Yeah, a couple people? Is that a want to or a have to, go into practices and games?
Coach says I will be there.
Have to?
Coach says have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if it came down to finishing a project or going to practice?
That's when
Practice.
mom and dad have the time.
Some people say practice, anybody say homework first?
Yeah, I think school, because without the school, you can't, like, if you don't make an A, you're not gonna be able to play on Friday or whatever,
I'm pretty
so.
strict on it.
So see how it kind of gets tricky sometimes, and you have to be able to adjust for that, right? So maybe what could be some solutions to figuring out if that's a want to or a have to?
Like how much
Talk
trouble
to
you
your
get in
coach.
if you don't do it.
Talk to your coach. Yeah, that's a great way.
And usually they don't assign projects due for the next day, so that means you've had time to plan
Yeah.
and do the assignments so you don't miss practice.
Exactly. So that goes back into prioritizing. So if we want to get our homework done before the practice or before the big game, we need to make time in our schedule to do that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So that's a want to versus a have to. Does that make sense? Okay. And we're going to do an activity with this in just a minute. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the ABC system. Has anybody ever heard of this? ABC system? I love it. It's awesome. It's really cool. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. So
Michael Jackson 5 song?
ABC.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So an A. So after you've made your to-do list, what's really cool for you guys to do is to go, what I like to do is go through and label stuff A, B, C, depending on what's most important or least important. So A would be the items that are most important, and C would be the items that are least important, and B would be kind of those, yeah, they're kind of important, but not as important as the A's, right? Okay. So this is called Covey's quadrant, and you guys don't have to put this in if you think it would confuse your kids. But there's different levels of importance and there's different levels of urgency. Urgency meaning like how quickly you have to get it done. So if it's really high in urgency and it's really high, it's really important and you have to get it done soon, then it needs to be done right now. If it's really important and it doesn't have to be done right at this moment, then you can put it in the, I need to figure out when I'm gonna do this. If it's low in importance and high in urgency, you have to get it done, but it's not that important, then you need to delegate it. You need to find out when you're gonna be able to do it, kind of like this one. If it's not important and it doesn't have to be done right away, dump it, okay? And just some examples of that, important, urgent, it could be cramming for an exam, which we're not gonna do because we're gonna be really good at time management. If you have an assignment that's coming up that you've not quite finished yet, if you've only done the rough draft and you really need to get that final draft done, that's gonna be up here, okay? Something you would dump, maybe some phone calls. I know we all like to text our friends, and I'm guilty of it too. But so, trivia nights, sometimes you're just not gonna be able to do it, I'm sorry. Rude. Surfing the net, that really cool term, everybody surfs the net, right? Okay, does that kind of make sense to you guys? Are there any questions about this? Okay. Yeah.
Where would Facebook go in there? Like when
What do you think, where do you think it would go?
That's pretty important.
Yeah,
I feel like it's pretty important.
I mean, I like to keep up with my friends, but maybe it's not that important.
Okay. Well, and I think that's something that you could look at your to-do list and figure out where it's gonna lie on the priorities, right? Is it gonna be labeled an A, a B, or C? So depending on the other stuff that you have down there, if you have time for Facebook, then it could be that it's really important and it's really urgent that you do it right now, right? If you don't have anything else going on, okay? Okay, so this is a worksheet that I've given out to you guys. And this is just for you to write down all of your assignments that you have for this week. If you want, I have multiple copies of this. I could give you one every week if you wanted. But basically, so you could write down English. Okay, well on Tuesday I know that I have an essay due, so I need to write down essay on that day. Math, I know that page 12, 6 through 16 is due tomorrow too. Okay, so this is just a way for you to keep track of what homework is due for this week. Okay? Another thing that we can use to manage our time is a planner. Does anybody use a planner right now? Any kind? Lauren, what kind of planner do you use?
The biggest one that they have that is set by
Okay.
time and date all the way across.
Okay, cool. Anybody else use a planner? Kylie, what kind of planner do you use?
Obviously. Same one Lauren has.
Okay. Does anybody ever put anything on their phones? In their calendar on their phone? Yeah, a couple people? That's what I do too. Anybody use their computer, the calendar on their computer? Yeah, a couple people do that too. So there's a lot of different ways that we can use planners. What's really cool about your phone and your computer for the paper users is that you can set alerts in there. So if you have homework due and you know you need to work on it tonight at 5 o'clock, you can set a reminder in there so it'll beep at you at 5 o'clock. That way you're not forgetting to do your homework, right? Or if you have an assignment due the next day, I can set up an alert tonight that'll tell me, hey, you have an assignment due tomorrow. Same thing for your bills. You can do the same thing to tell you when your bills are due, which I also do.
Or you could do automatic, right?
That's true.
But then you get yourself.
Okay, let me get on the right side.
You get yourself in trouble. Like you don't.
You forget.
Okay, so are there any questions about planners or how to use planners?
What if I can't afford to buy a planner?
That is a great question. I have also provided you guys a sheet of a weekly planner. And in fact, I did make a planner for a girl that couldn't afford one last year by printing these out and just had her write the days of the week up there. So this is the kind of planner that I think Lauren and Kylie are using. And so what you can do is you can say, okay, I know that I have class from 8 to 3:30 every day, right? So what I want to do is I want to block off these times. You can color it in, you can write class time, whatever you need to do. And that way, at night, you can go through and say, all right, well, from 5:30 to 6:30, I'm going to block off that time, and I'm going to work on my reading assignment right here, okay? From 7 to 9, I'm going to talk on the phone, watch a little TV, do whatever I want. And so that's just a way for you to look at it and say, like to visually look at it and be able to see what kind of time you have during the week. Does that make sense? Yeah, Jason.
One time I was talking to the people from the Enhanced Learning Center here on campus, and their suggestion to students is that if you have a calendar on your phone, to use that and ditch a written planner. In other words, don't duplicate your roles. So
Right.
technology's there, let it help you. Now, I still use it.
Yeah.
That's something that students, I don't know who has that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I find that whenever I use duplicates, like I'll put something in my phone and not put it in my paper planner, so
And
that
my
might be
point
something.
was, if technology is available, let it help us.
Yeah. Well, if you're good at technology and you know you're gonna use it.
Yes, I mean, I think the point is use whatever format it is that best fits you.
Right.
But if you're on your phone all the time,
Yeah, totally makes
then
sense.
maybe try to make an
I
effort
don't
to
know if
use
they
that
can
to.
be in a school. It's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
They can in between classes now.
Well, check your school policy,
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
it varies by school, but yes.
That's true. Sorry.
Yeah, it varies.
Okay, are there any other questions about this? If you want a copy of this, if you want me to print you out and make you a little planner, we can totally do that, just to let you know. I really don't mind to do that at all for you guys.
I've used this with college students before,
Mhm.
and have them just do what a typical week looks like, and then we look at it as, it's kind of like your diet, you know, and everything, like, oh, I didn't realize I was eating this bad. When you do this, like, I didn't realize how much time I wasn't studying. You know?
And that's something that's on our brochure that we're gonna talk about in just a second. Okay, just some other important concepts. Remember those goals that we were talking about? So we need to make sure that we incorporate those goals into our planning. So if you have past due assignments that you told me that you wanna start trying to make up, or if you need to study for that science test coming up, we need to make sure that we're putting those in our planners and on our to-do lists as well. Making sure you're staying organized, that's gonna save you a lot of time in the long run. I know it seems like a hassle, and we get caught up and we throw stuff in our backpack and we don't think about it, right? It gets crumpled up and stays at the bottom. So making sure that you have a folder that you can put I need to turn this homework in, having a place to put that kind of stuff. And then looking at how we're wasting time, because like Jason just pointed out, I'm sure that if we all mapped out our weeks that we normally do, I'm sure I'll waste a lot of time. I know I'll waste a lot of time, sitting on the couch eating ice cream, watching Carrie and Lucy.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I want to kind of fill that. It can be like 5 study from 7 to 9 every
I don't know
day.
what she's doing. I was laughing fast.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just huge amount of time to do whatever.
Went along the same lines, if you study, if you have a test on Friday and you start studying on Monday, you're gonna have a lot more free time if you space it out during the week, right? Ellen?
And I think kids, once they do something ahead of time, that they don't have to panic anymore. They're like, wow, that feels a lot better,
Lauren, it's easier to keep up than to catch up.
Exactly.
Maybe we should add that quote.
I'm gonna make that.
Okay, so, I'm gonna pass this out.
Okay, so now we're gonna do an activity. There's 2 sheets of paper, so make sure you grab both of them.
No, I circled them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, never mind.
You want, you don't want
Yeah, we're good.
Should be nice,
Okay, so for this activity, just like Heather explained earlier, we're gonna use the ABCs to prioritize what you're doing. So the directions are on the first page. So it says identify the tasks listed below that are want-tos and tasks that are have-tos. For example, you can either underline your have-tos and circle your want-tos, or if you have highlighters or markers and you wanna color code them, that's good too. So use this activity to relate to what you do on a typical day. You may not circle or underline or color code all of them, so you can just go through and choose what you actually do in a typical day. And there's blank spaces at the bottom for you to add in what you think you do. So there's some extra lines for you to add in whatever else that's probably maybe not on the list. And then after you go through versus have to and want to, use the ABC system to prioritize each task. Place the corresponding letter on the line next to the task. So next to it, all these lines, you're gonna go through and either label it as an A or B or a C versus, this is absolutely have to do this, A, versus this is more like a want to, this is gonna be a C, and then somewhere in the middle for your Bs. And then once you do all that, on the last page, under the underlined A, B, and C, you're gonna list your tasks underneath those letters. So all of the tasks you listed A, you're gonna write them here and so on and so forth. And then we can transfer that into whatever planners or organization you guys use, so you know, these are my A's, I absolutely have to do these soon. versus B and C. So take some time.
So you want students now?
Oh, well, you don't really have to, I'm just saying.
I need to have this thing.
So that's that.
Yeah, getting dressed is very
Right? Okay,
Getting dressed, you better do that. It better be an A.
so this is another one of those activities that you can take out if you need to, if you don't have the internet access. But this goes, there's 168 hours in a week, how do you spend your hours? And so they can go through and put how many hours they sleep, and how many naps they take, and all that fun jazz. And it'll tell them how many it adds up to.
Is that on your PowerPoint?
Yes, it is. Okay, when trying to manage your time effectively, just remember, make your to-do list. List out your want-tos versus your have-tos, and you can underline it, or circle it, or color code it like Carolyn was telling you. Using the ABC system really helps to figure out which ones are most important, which ones are least important, and then putting those into your planner. Making sure that with that A list, you're putting those in first. Those are the most important things that you have to get done. So remember that quadrant, the 4 squares that I showed you? Remember the ones up here that were most important and most urgent? Those are the ones that are gonna need to go in first, okay? And that's just 3 rows. We also have a brochure that we made last year.
I can pull it up over.
Okay. It's on the thing, but if you wanna look at a hard copy of it, it's up here too. It has how to organize, it has some tips on how to organize, it has the Covey's quadrant in here. It has common time wasters such as sleeping, using your cell phone, not being organized, being on the internet. The 168 hours, there's a little mini version of that in here if you don't have computer access. How to prioritize, it explains the ABC system, and then it's also teaches you how to use a planner. So, and then there are some quizzes on the back if they want to go home and they have internet access at home. If you want to assign this for them to do. Okay,
Cool. Yeah, I think that's it. And then on the drive, Heather just has those things, and you guys can just print them out. You don't have to like pull them up and
Couple things. First of all, with your group presentation, I just wanted to give you guys a huge props of positive behavior narration that you were doing. Being able to call people by names and point out really good things and successes is like awesome with classroom management. Also, this is an awesome presentation for a group like that, but you also may just pull like as needed, like if you have a student who you're going through a different intervention with and they're struggling with their schedule, pull up those planner pages and do it just then. So like time management really is going to go throughout almost all of the interventions that we're doing, like finding time or making time to research scholarships, research careers, research colleges, all that sort of stuff. So like, if this isn't just one thing that you do, like for one presentation, it's gonna come up a lot of times.
Yeah, I know that I'll get dead fish face if I give the entire presentation. So,
And I
being
mean,
able to pick and choose what you do.
so, you know, a lot of this stuff we have is in PowerPoint. We have actual PowerPoint presentations and Prezi set up. But if that's something that's not feasible for you to work with a student at your school, then you can always just print it off and walk, talk to them with it. It's not like you have to do an actual PowerPoint presentation. So use these tools and resources however best fits you guys.
Something else, I mean, time management can be, it could become negative if they're failing to meet all of those to-do lists there. So I mean, one thing that you can think about doing is do some of the ones that are quick or easiest to do first, then move on to something a little harder after that.
And that was in a slide in the PowerPoint, I just didn't go over it.
That's okay.
Yeah. And there was also, I think, in there, it says do the boring stuff first, because once you get past the boring stuff, it.
I mean, I was taught to, do the hardest first and then go on, but that's just never worked for me. I really like to get, clear everything else out and then concentrate on the hardest one, but I guess whatever each person needs.
And as somebody said earlier, remember if they, as they're even if it is an easy task and they achieve it, make sure to celebrate that, so that's all builds into their confidence and stuff. All right, cool deal. Let's move on to our last pro-academic category of test taking, note taking, and study skills.
Do I need to do the Prezi first, or which would you recommend?
I'm sorry, which one?
The test taking?
I
know
know make the
Caitlin put that
Prezi,
together.
I think Caitlin made the Prezi.
What is it?
The test taking
Prezi?
Prezi.
Would you recommend doing that first? Oops.
I don't know if I made that one.
I don't know.
That's what I did. Click on it.
Who's not here?
Is that it? No.
Is that it?
It may have been an old coach.
Taylor?
Is it over there?
I don't remember who made that.
Some moments today. I'm starting to get a little nervous about you.
Alright. Today we're going to talk about note taking and test/study skills. How many of you take notes when you're in class? Okay, quite a few of you. How many of you don't take notes? That's not a problem. The better question is, how many of you want to learn how to take notes and be a professional note taker? Nobody. That's okay. So you don't have to be a professional. The idea of that is, it's just you have to take effective notes. So you might jot something down and then toss it in the trash and never look at it again. Or you might write it down and then look at it later in the week and remember, okay, well I remember something about this. What did the teacher say? The teacher said something. So a part of taking effective notes is reviewing after class, make sure they're accurate. And so if you need to go ask the teacher, you said something really important about World War II, but I have no idea what you said. So then, going down, sorry, I'm doing this for myself. You might write down keywords or concepts, but not really sentences. So abbreviate, use symbols. So if the teacher's writing something on the board, that's probably really important and you want to look at that and write it down. So you might say, World War II, like jot a few words down. You know, date, few key people. So listen for those clue words and the teacher will tell you what's important. They might use phrases like 3 important concepts or key people in World War II or blah blah blah. And then for each day, start a new page on your notes, date it so that way you can look back. So World War II was on April 7th. So that way you can go to your teacher and ask them, okay, on April 7th we covered this subject, but I still have no clue what you're talking about. And then next, so a few of you wanted to study like a pro, not. But a few tips are, reading and taking notes like a pro, you might look through the chapter before you go over it in class. And some things that I like to do is I go through the summary parts and then I'll go back and read the chapter. So I can highlight the notes and headings. And then when you're taking notes, you might use a bullet or a number system. My favorite is, and this is just personal to me, I like to make a star and circle it. It's really important.
I like to use a highlighter.
Yes, sometimes you can highlight things, and I've got it highlighted right here. And if it's really important, a teacher might use a phrase like, hypothetically speaking, this might be on the test.
Subtle.
So that's when you might know to put a star with a circle, or you might highlight it, you might underline it with a magic marker, whatever works for you. It's not important to be a professional and only do a rigid way of note-taking. There are many ways, you just have to find out what's right for you. So it might take a couple of times. You might have to highlight it and then you realize, well, I don't care about highlighting. I'd rather draw a star, or I'd rather circle it, or put a big number 1 by it. And then another important thing, well, another idea you might have if you're studying is called the Freyer model. And so you could tell your students, a little side note, you don't have to tell them it's the Freyer model, but it's a good way to study. And I had to write this down, because in this one, it's the definition, and and then non-examples, and examples, and a diagram or a picture of what you might be studying. So for example, you might study a mammal, and then some characteristics and definitions of what the mammal is. Some examples of what a mammal is, a man, a monkey, a mongoose, and then non-examples, things that are unrelated, a bird, a snake, a fish. And so then you might draw a picture or a diagram of what the mammal looks like. You know, they have warm blood, they're covered in fur, live births, you might draw a little baby beside it, not an egg. Everyone's having a good time? Let me get my notes here. And then this is a coach intervention tool. I probably should have gone over this first. Some key points you might go over are listening skills. We talked about those before with Caitlin. It's kind of rude if I'm up here standing, you're giggling and talking on your phone and typing on your computers. So it's important, especially if your teacher's saying, this is important. They're up here and you're not even paying attention. This is important, this will be on the test. They could stand up here all day, but if you're not listening, it's not going to matter. So those note-taking skills, you might have to figure out what's right for you. If you need to highlight, this is important, this is going to be on the test. And then going down into students, if you don't take your notes and you don't use them, then you might not remember what's on the test. So we talked about time management, writing things down or putting it in a planner. So if you remember to study, then you're going to look at your notes. You're going to remember to look at your notes. So it's not important to remember, but if you have an alarm clock on your phone or a reminder on the date to study, then you're going to remember. Taking notes in class. You just start a new page and then you'll date it. And there's different ways you can date it. You might want to put the date in the corner. You might use the margin for the date. There's different ways. Let's see. I don't know how many times I can reiterate listening for clue words that the teacher might use. And then reviewing the notes. What I like to do is start at the beginning of the week and review my notes from class, and then maybe before I go to sleep just refresh myself on what I have learned the whole week, and then get a good night's rest, and then wake up. And if you feel like you want to, you can review it in the morning, just make sure that you've got it in your head. And then it's important to ask questions in class. If you're unclear, if you have no idea what the 3 important key figures were in the World War II, you know, raise your hand and say, I didn't get that. Can I write that down again? Your teacher's not going to say no. We're moving on. So I'm going to open it back up. What are some things that motivate you to take notes? Those of you who said you take notes. Why do you take notes?
Because I have to stay busy, that way I don't fall asleep.
Okay.
I don't like my paper to be all messy, I like to be organized.
Organization. So it helps keep you involved in the class, so you're engaged, you're listening, so that way you know what's on the test. And it's not always, I mean, it is important to know what's on the test, but then later on in life, you might remember something. The 3 key figures of World War II, you might have to write an essay about those, and you're like, oh, I remember those, so now I know to go to the library and look up those figures and write a paper about them. Anyway, that's all I have. Oh wait, the Prezi.
I did make that one.
Yeah. This just kind of goes over everything I did. This is really good though. I like Prezi. So back to goals. Whenever we're looking at goals, one of you might say, I want to make good grades, or I failed last semester, but I think I want to pass this semester. That could be one of your overarching goals. So how are we going to get there? There's 3, to me, simple steps. So you might read and take notes, and you don't have to do it like a pro, but you have to find out what's right for you. So checking out the chapter beforehand, you might look at the summary and look at key headings to make sure you know you're in the right chapter. I've been there before. I read the wrong chapter and then I get to class. It's like, this isn't the right chapter. Utilize bullet points and subheadings. So just to organize yourself, I think, Caitlin, you said you like to be organized and you have your system of, okay, this is important and this is a few other things that are important underneath that topic. And then some people, they use colors or dates or titles to organize their notes section. I know, Heather, you said that you like to highlight things with different colors to make sure they're important. Or underlining the key definitions or words. And then pay attention. Your books will help you know what's important. They'll bold words or they'll italicize them so that way they'll say, okay, this is really important. And then step 2, memorize the important stuff. And each person has their own way. I know, Jason, that you said you didn't really care about the Freyer model, but you did like making mnemonic devices and making jokes out of some of the things you learned.
Everything.
So, does anybody have a specific way that they help memorize things? Like, does anybody, I don't know what FACE stands for. I know it's music, but.
The space.
My algebra 2 teacher in high school had a song that went with Pop Goes the Weasel for some math equation I can't remember the name of, but yes, the quadratic formula.
That's good. Does anybody else have any?
How many do you get?
That's what I was gonna say. When you're learning the color spectrum, for example, you know, okay, does everybody know their colors? I'm not being demeaning, or just red. Somebody shout out a color.
Red,
Okay.
orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Okay, so then you have your acronym.
It's purple.
So
Yeah.
violet. But
You call it orangey
What's
dip?
indigo?
No.
It's kind of like a purple.
yeah. So we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet.
That's why I'm getting hard.
Yes, Laura.
I learned how to spell beautiful from Ace Ventura.
Oh,
right.
I banana from that Gwen Stefani song.
Yeah.
A-N-A-N-A-S.
That's a
This
good song.
beep.
Actually, I have no idea what you're talking about.
What did she say?
I'm kidding. But those are all ways. I mean, you can find humor in it, even if it is a silly song, and you didn't know how to spell bananas. That's good. And then the final step is your final study tips. Try to determine what the test format is. Example, for the ACT, it's always going to be the same structure. It's going to be the different sections, the same times. So that way you're not overwhelmed when you get there and you're like, oh, I didn't even know math was going to be on this test. If there's a study guide, if the teacher sends you out a study guide, use it. It's not a test of like your knowledge, it's helping you remember the information. And then if you're at home and your little brother's crying and your mom's yelling at you, what are you going to do? You might say, Mom, okay, I need to go study for 30 minutes. I'll help you out with my little brother. I'll feed him. And then after that, I need to go study for 30 minutes. So find a space that's similar to the test-taking environment that you're going to be in. So obviously, whenever you come to class, your teacher's not going to be yelling at you and whapping and turning the TV on and flicking through the channels at 95 miles per hour. So find a place that's similar. You're going to want a quiet place maybe, or if you like to listen to music, some people like to listen to music while they're studying. And just, as always, pay attention to your headings, your definitions, your diagrams, and your summaries. Those things are going to really lead you to what's important, like what's on the test, what your teacher really wants you to know. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I went through that really fast and really loud and really...
Whitney, there's nothing about you that can ever be loud.
It was great, Whitney.
Woo!